amount of people saying this is rigged was crazy.
This fight was rigged.
So here's what just went down. Jake Paul just unleashed something absolutely wild right after his fight with Anthony Joshua finished. And honestly, what he said afterward might be creating more drama than the actual stoppage did.
A horrible concept for a fight. I didn't even watch it. I know everyone, including myself, was saying this is a lose-lose for Jake because even if he won, he would still get laughed at for it, which he is, rightfully so.
Less than a few hours have passed since Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua wrapped up. And you can already feel how much this result is bothering people.
From the very beginning, I said there would be no knockouts in this fight. I was very, very firm in that prediction.
They called it for Jake Paul. And look, I get his whole journey and why people follow him. But this didn't feel clean-cut at all. Not for me. And definitely not for most people who watched it happen. The fight wrapped up. They made their announcement. But instead of feeling settled, it created this weird void where you keep rewinding things in your mind, wondering if what you witnessed actually makes sense.
Is because it's just boring. It was extremely lackluster, and that was an extremely predictable thing to see from a mile away.
What went down immediately in the ring painted its own picture. The moment that referee jumped in and called it off, nobody exploded with that shocked excitement you usually see. Confusion hit first. Anthony Joshua was on the ground, but he was alert, conscious, working through what had just gone down.
You see this man visibly holding back his punches, where he would throw a punch and then he would just not let it connect. He would just drop his hand down.
Jake Paul threw his hands up, but even that celebration looked hesitant. Like he wasn't totally sure either. The audience didn't go crazy. You heard some boos, random yelling, and this weird stunned silence that just doesn't happen when a heavyweight bout gets decided. It felt more like something got cut short, rather than properly finished.
When it was clear as day that Jake's face was wide open to receive it. Bro, this is disappointing.
Going into this fight, most people were thinking along predictable lines. Experts kept talking about Joshua's jab game, his composure, how he controls space in the ring. Nobody was saying Jake Paul couldn't win. But the general thinking was, if Joshua stayed calm, this thing would end with either Joshua finishing him or taking a clear points victory. The betting reflected that thinking. The longer this fight went, the more confidence swung toward Joshua. That was pretty much everyone's take. Even Jake Paul had said publicly this was his biggest challenge yet. Not his biggest money fight, but his most dangerous matchup.
And after everything is said and done, they probably took home a good bit more than that. Ain't no telling. I'm hearing north of 80 million for Jake and anywhere between 60 to 75 million for Mike Tyson, from my understanding.
Knowing all that makes the ending feel even weirder. Inside that ring, Joshua was doing exactly what people predicted early on. He stayed patient, used his length advantage, didn't rush into wild exchanges. Jake Paul had some moments, but nothing that felt like it was building to something inevitable. When that knockdown came, it didn't look like one of those shots that just erases someone completely. It looked like a solid hit followed by someone losing their balance for a second. Joshua dropped, yes, but he didn't look disconnected from what was happening around him.
This fight was rigged. I could be wrong. I can't even say that because in my gut, I don't feel like I am.
How the referee handled it became the main talking point almost right away. That count seemed rushed to a lot of viewers, and the decision to end everything felt abrupt. In heavyweight boxing, fighters usually get more space to recover, especially champions and former champions who've proven they can take punishment. That's not special treatment, that's just how these things normally go. This time that recovery window felt way smaller than usual. When the stoppage happened, it felt like a choice made for convenience, not because it was obviously necessary.
Why is he not moving like he was during training? He didn't hit the signature Mike Tyson.
Once the second round got going, the whole dynamic of this fight started showing itself in ways that weren't good for Jake Paul. Around 3 minutes 10 seconds into round 2, Anthony Joshua found his groove, and boxing coaches could see it happening immediately. He started controlling distance with this methodical, searching jab thrown not to hurt, but to position himself perfectly.
Sport for a year now, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, but all of this shit's fucking great. You see people whining and dining each other. You see people at Staples Center. This sport's great, for sure.
Joshua's front hand kept connecting at this steady rate, snapping Paul's head back just enough to mess with his balance without leaving himself open, based on the live CompuBox numbers they showed during the DAZN broadcast. Joshua connected with 11 jabs in round 2 alone, while Paul only landed 4 total shots that entire round.
And we saw it play out. What we saw here was a clear indication that Mike was holding back, not doing the things that we know come natural to him when he's in the ring and ready to go.
How Jake Paul reacted during this stretch told you everything. Instead of moving sideways, he kept backing straight up into the ropes, especially along that north side of the ring near the blue corner. Commentators Todd Grisham and Sergio Mora both caught this happening live, around 2 minutes, 5 seconds into the round, pointing out that Paul's footwork looked way less sure than it did during his previous fight back in August 20. Mora specifically called out how Paul's timing seemed off by just a split second, especially when he tried countering Joshua's jab with his right hand over the top.
And we saw it play out. What we saw here was a clear indication that Mike was holding back, not doing the things that we know come natural to him when he's in the ring and ready to go.
What got ringside reporters really curious wasn't just what was happening between these two fighters, but what was going on outside those ropes. Multiple journalists sitting ringside, including Boxing Scenes, Jake Donovan, and ESPN's Mike Coppinger later brought up how the judges were acting during round 2. One judge sitting on the west side of the ring didn't seem to be writing as much as expected, while another kept looking over at the referee during exchanges. None of this proved anything by itself, but it was strange enough that people talked about it after everything ended. Look, a legend, because you gotta say it right. A legend, it's a legend, it's a legend. Round 3 only made those observations more obvious. Right from the opening bell, 6 minutes into the fight, Joshua started putting together combinations with way more confidence. At 6:42, he connected with a sharp left jab, followed by a straight right that whipped Paul's head back and got the crowd making noise. Paul took the shot without dropping, but he wasn't firing back much. According to unofficial CompuBox numbers, the broadcast team shared Joshua landed 18 total punches in round 3, while Paul connected with 9, most of them single shots instead of combinations. I was born at night, but not last night. How the crowd inside that arena reacted made the momentum impossible to miss. Every time Joshua connected cleanly, especially with that right hand, the noise jumped dramatically. At 7:55, after a 3-punch sequence from Joshua that finished with a right to the body, the whole crowd got on their feet. This wasn't biased. Cheering, this was people recognizing who was taking control. Even Jake Paul's corner looked more stressed during this round, with trainer BJ Flores yelling instructions way more urgently than in earlier rounds.
There was no anything worthwhile. As I said from the beginning, this is just a cash grab. It is 2 athletes getting a payday and nothing else.
Even with all that, when unofficial post-fight scorecards started getting passed around, several analysts couldn't believe how round 3 got scored. 2 of the 3 judges apparently gave that round to Paul, a call that shocked analysts watching the live feed. Former world champion Timothy Bradley, speaking on ESPN's immediate post-fight panel around 23:40 into the broadcast, said straight up that he had Joshua winning that round based on clean connections and ring control. This disagreement became one of the first real technical problems in the controversy that followed.
A legend, but he's also a man. And there is no man that can beat Father Time. Time is undefeated, and it always will be.
Round 4 is when everything shifted completely. Around 9. 18 Joshua connected with a right hand that clearly rocked Jake Paul. Paul's legs went stiff, and he moved back toward the ropes near the neutral corner. This moment didn't last long, but it was obvious. Joshua followed up carefully, throwing a left hook that barely missed, then stepping forward again. What stood out was how fast the referee assigned for this fight, and positioned slightly to Joshua's left, moved between these fighters during what came next. Several punches that looked like clean connections got interrupted before either guy could really engage. At this point, momentum was clearly moving one direction.
Really early from what I can tell. He ran out of steam by like the second round almost entirely, at least from what I've...
Joshua's confidence was building, his posture straight and loose, while Paul's movement got tighter and more protective. Ringside cameras caught Joshua's corner, approving at 9:45, while Paul's corner looked visibly worried. This round, more than any other, would become the center of post-fight controversy. Not because of how it ended, but because of how much control Joshua seemed to be gaining. Then came the sequence that flipped everything. With roughly 18 seconds remaining in round 4, around 10:42, on the fight clock, Jake Paul threw this wide overhand right. It wasn't pretty technique. It came around almost thrown from the shoulder, but it caught Joshua near the temple as Joshua was moving slightly to his left. Joshua dropped to one knee, his right glove hitting the canvas first.
It was always going to be an incredibly difficult challenge to fight someone as young as Jake Paul.
What followed is where the real debate started. Joshua immediately tried to get back up. At the count of 3, he was already lifting himself off that canvas. By 4, he was on one knee, eyes up, looking straight ahead. The referee started counting almost right away, with barely any pause between the knockdown and the verbal count. Multiple analysts later pointed out that the rhythm of this count seemed faster than normal. By the count of 6, Joshua was completely upright, hands raised, feet planted under him. Looking at it, Joshua appeared balanced and alert. His eyes followed the referee, his gloves were up, and he stepped forward at what looked like the count of 7. Despite all this, the referee waved it off at 8, signaling the stoppage. The reaction inside that arena was instant and loud. Boos came from multiple sections, including those right next to the ring.
I am not surprised that Jake won this fight, and people are already clowning on him for it, saying that he's already booked his next fight against Joe Biden and then his following fight against Jimmy Carter. Jake Paul hurts more elderly people than a staircase. He's built a reputation of just challenging.
Slow motion replays started playing almost immediately across every broadcast. DAZN and ESPN and Sky Sports all showed the sequence, from at least 3 different angles. From that overhead camera, Joshua's posture looked solid. From the ringside angle, his eyes looked clear and focused. These replays triggered immediate debate among commentators, with former fighters questioning whether this stoppage met the standard normally used in heavyweight title-level fights.
I know everyone, including myself, was saying this is a lose-lose for Jake because even if he won, he would still get laughed at for it.
The technical complaints started right away once those replay loops began running across broadcasts. And it focused on details that boxing people notice automatically. At the moment the referee stepped in, Anthony Joshua's eyes were sharp and responsive. This was clear on the DAZN slow motion replay, shown at approximately 12:18 a.m. Eastern Time on December 20th. Joshua wasn't staring into space or blinking weirdly. His gaze followed how the referee moved and his head tracked forward as he adjusted his stance. For ringside analysts, eye focus is one of the first signs of whether a fighter is really hurt, and in this case, it didn't match how urgent that stoppage was. All of this fed into a bigger accusation repeated by fans across platforms on December 20th, and into the early hours of December 20th, that boxing was once again protecting money over merit, not through direct corruption, but through patterns, timing, and staying quiet. The controversy didn't build because of one punch or one call. It built because of how every single piece around that decision lined up in a way that made people uncomfortable.